As the Great Depression gripped America, every meal was a challenge, and yet, out of hardship came some of the most fascinating culinary improvisations. One such creation was the Dandelion Sandwich, a humble, foraged meal that tells a story of survival, resourcefulness, and the power of nature to nourish even in the darkest times. It may surprise modern audiences, but dandelions weren't always seen as pesky weeds. Back in the 1930s, they were lifelines, nutrient-rich, widely available, and completely free. Families struggling to put food on the table would send children out into the fields, yards, and alleyways to gather dandelion greens by the armful. Their peppery taste, rich in vitamins A and C, made them more than just filler. They were a superfood before the term even existed. The sandwich itself was as simple as it was brilliant. Fresh dandelion greens, usually rinsed and briefly wilted, were pressed between two slices of buttered bread, sometimes toasted if one was lucky. In wealthier homes, a bit of bacon grease or vinegar might be added for extra flavor. But for most, the bitterness of the greens paired with the richness of butter or lard was enough to make this sandwich both filling and fortifying. More than a meal, the dandelion sandwich became a symbol, proof that even in lean times, Americans could look to the land and make do. It was an act of reclaiming dignity, using what nature gave freely to fuel the body and spirit. Today, as foraging and farm-to-table trends make a comeback, there's a renewed respect for what our ancestors knew all along. Food doesn't always come from the store. Sometimes, it's been growing in your backyard all along. So next time you pass by a field of dandelions, consider this: those little yellow blossoms once helped feed a nation. And with just 2 slices of bread and a handful of greens, they still can. Stay with us. Our journey into America's forgotten sandwiches is far from over. Coming up next, a strange crunchy bite that took kids by storm in the 1940s. You won't want to miss it. As the days of the Great Depression wore on, Americans discovered some truly unexpected food pairings. With creativity as their only luxury, they reached deep into their pantries, and sometimes their desperation, and turned 2 unlikely ingredients into a strangely satisfying staple. This is the story of the peanut butter and pickle sandwich, an oddity that still sparks debate to this day. At first glance, the combination raises eyebrows. But back then, logic wasn't guided by gourmet trends. It was ruled by what could stretch $1. Peanut butter, rich in protein and calories, was affordable and shelf-stable. Pickles, usually homemade from backyard cucumbers, were tart, crunchy, and preserved through canning, a Depression-era skill nearly everyone relied on. The first bite was a surprise. Creamy, salty peanut butter mixed with the cold snap of vinegar-brined pickles delivered an oddly refreshing contrast. Sweet and sour. Soft and crisp. It was a sandwich that woke up tired taste buds and gave families something, anything, different to chew on. What's remarkable is that this sandwich didn't just survive, it quietly endured. While others faded into the pages of dusty cookbooks, the peanut butter and pickle sandwich clung on in pockets of the American Midwest and South. It became an acquired taste passed from grandparents to curious grandkids who asked, "Why would you ever eat that?" But this humble pairing carried more than taste. It carried history, stories of resourceful mothers trying to feed 5 kids on pennies, of backyard gardens that yielded just enough for another jar of pickles, of moments when families laughed together over strange meals that, somehow, made them feel full. So today, when we lay those pickle slices on a thick spread of peanut butter between 2 slices of white bread, we're not just reviving a sandwich. We're tasting survival, invention, and the odd comfort of unexpected flavor. Next up in our lineup of Depression-era sandwich surprises, one that may have crunched its way into lunchboxes all over America, the celery and salt sandwich. Sometimes, the simplest flavors can carry the most powerful stories. In the heart of the Depression, when pantries were bare and spices a rare luxury, Americans got creative. And from that scarcity was born the mayonnaise and pepper sandwich, a modest combination that became a symbol of culinary resilience. Imagine a rural American kitchen in 1932. The bread was homemade, dense, coarse, and baked in a wood-fired oven or iron stove. There wasn't any ham, no turkey, not even a sliver of cheese. But there was a jar of mayonnaise and a tin of black pepper, and with those, a family could still put something on the table that felt like a meal. This sandwich wasn't about indulgence, it was about illusion. The rich creaminess of mayo added moisture and comfort, while that dash of pepper offered a tiny jolt of warmth, almost like biting into something far more luxurious. For many children, this was their lunch. For working men, it filled the gap just enough to push through another shift of labor. And for mothers, it was a way to create something out of nothing. It might sound basic today, maybe even strange, but in those years, basic was survival. People didn't eat for pleasure, they ate to endure. And this sandwich gave them that. As we continue this journey through forgotten Depression-era foods, this humble pairing reminds us that flavor isn't always in the ingredient. It's in the meaning we assign to it. A spoonful of mayonnaise and a sprinkle of pepper became the taste of dignity. It was a small defiance against hunger, a way to say, "We're still here." Stay with us, because our next forgotten sandwich steps even deeper into the heart of survival cooking, where waste wasn't an option and flavor was forged from pure grit. As we move deeper into the forgotten archives of Depression-era survival sandwiches, we arrive at one that speaks not just of hunger, but of heritage. The cold corned beef sandwich wasn't just a lunchtime meal, it was a statement of what could be salvaged from scarcity. Born from a time when meat was either rationed or stretched thin across large families, corned beef, especially the canned variety, became a treasured item. Its long shelf life made it a pantry staple, and when served cold between slices of thick, homemade bread, it offered protein-packed sustenance without the need for fire or fuss. This sandwich found its way into lunchboxes carried by steelworkers, farmers, and students alike. It was simple: a layer of cold corned beef, often mashed with a fork or sliced thin, pressed into hearty bread with maybe a smear of mustard if you were lucky, or horseradish if you were bold. Sometimes, mothers would lay down a leaf of lettuce or thin onion slivers to add crunch and disguise the repetition of canned meat day after day. But even without the extras, it was a meal that reminded families they were still holding on, still pushing forward. There's something hauntingly beautiful about this sandwich. Cold, yes, but full of warmth in its purpose. It was eaten by men who had just stood in soup lines and women who'd bartered flour for meat tins. And it kept them going. Today, the cold corned beef sandwich is rarely seen outside delis or Irish pubs. But its humble roots deserve to be honored, not because of culinary creativity, but because of resilience. In every bite was a story of a nation learning to make do, to endure, and to survive with quiet dignity. This was more than a sandwich. It was a lifeline wrapped in wax paper. When survival meant creativity, American families leaned into unexpected pairings that worked wonders, and one such forgotten gem is the apple and cheese sandwich. It might sound unusual to modern ears, but in the depths of the Great Depression, this sandwich offered the perfect marriage of nourishment, availability, and comforting contrast. Picture a time when meat was a luxury and refrigeration was scarce. Apples were among the few fruits widely available year-round, especially in rural orchards or small backyard trees. Meanwhile, cheese, particularly harder, aged varieties, could be stored without spoilage for longer periods. The two together made for a clever combination that was inexpensive, filling, and packed with flavor. The typical version used thin slices of tart apples, like Granny Smith or Macintosh, layered between slices of hearty whole wheat or rye bread. The apple's natural crunch and brightness were balanced beautifully by slices of sharp cheddar or American cheese, lending a salty, creamy undertone. For some, a light spread of mustard or even a dab of honey elevated the flavors further, giving it a playful complexity few Depression-era sandwiches could claim. But this wasn't just a pantry sandwich, it held emotional weight. Parents packed it for their children's school lunches, and many workers tucked it into their lunch pails wrapped in wax paper. It was portable, didn't require cooking, and didn't spoil quickly, making it perfect for hard times when refrigeration and access to hot food weren't guaranteed. Beyond its practicality, the apple and cheese sandwich gave people a little spark of joy, a momentary escape from hardship, and a taste that felt just a little indulgent. And even today, those who remember it often recall the strange satisfaction it gave, a reminder that even during the darkest times, a little sweetness and comfort could go a long way. Stay tuned. The next sandwich in our journey through time is another surprising mix born from resilience and necessity. In the long shadows of the Great Depression, when kitchen shelves were more bare than full, some meals were born out of pure necessity, and among the simplest yet most enduring of them all was the mustard sandwich. While it may sound stark, this sandwich was a lifeline for countless American families. Picture this: a dusty farmhouse kitchen with nothing left but a loaf of stale bread, a half-empty jar of mustard, and a lot of hope. No meat, no butter, not even cheese. Just bread and mustard. That was dinner. The mustard wasn't just for flavor, it was for survival. Its tangy bite shocked the senses, gave a sense of eating something real, and masked the blandness of plain bread. In fact, it created an illusion of indulgence in a time when real indulgence was out of reach. That sharp zing became the taste of perseverance. In working-class towns and among laid-off factory workers, the mustard sandwich was sometimes wrapped up in old newspaper and sent in tin lunch pails. It didn't spoil. It didn't cost anything. And it could be made in a blink. For children, it was often the first thing they learned to make by themselves. Some folks added extras when they could, maybe a slice of onion, maybe a sprinkle of salt. But when times were truly lean, it was just the bare minimum: 2 slices of bread and a hearty smear of mustard. Today, it might raise eyebrows or even a chuckle, but back then, this sandwich symbolized something powerful. It was courage between 2 slices. It was the will to go on, the grit to get through the day, and the hope that maybe tomorrow would bring a little more. So while the mustard sandwich may never grace the table of fine dining, it holds a place in American food history that is unforgettable. Because sometimes, survival came in the form of a bitter bite and a brave heart. When we think about classic sandwiches, butter usually steals the spotlight. But during the Great Depression, when every penny counted, many American families turned to an alternative that was just as essential: oleo, or margarine. This humble spread wasn't just a cheap substitute, it was a lifesaver that helped stretch meals further without sacrificing taste. The Olio Sandwich was simplicity itself: 2 slices of soft bread, generously slathered with oleo. No fancy fillings or elaborate spreads, just pure, creamy oleo melting into the bread's warm embrace. For many families, especially those facing financial hardship, this sandwich was a quick, comforting meal that could be enjoyed any time. What made oleo so popular wasn't just its affordability. It was also its long shelf life, which was crucial during a time when refrigeration was a luxury. Housewives could keep oleo on hand longer than butter, making it a practical pantry staple. Plus, its mild flavor paired well with whatever else was on hand, sometimes a sprinkle of salt, sometimes a touch of sugar, to create subtle variations on this basic sandwich. Though simple, the Olio Sandwich carried a deeper significance. It symbolized resilience and resourcefulness, embodying the spirit of a generation making do with less but still finding small pleasures in everyday food. Today, while oleo has mostly been replaced by butter and other spreads, this sandwich remains a delicious reminder of American ingenuity during tough times. So next time you spread margarine on your toast, remember the Olio Sandwich, a small, forgotten classic that once fed millions with its creamy, economical charm. As we continue our journey through America's forgotten sandwiches, the tomato and mayonnaise sandwich takes its rightful place on our list. This simple yet surprisingly satisfying creation was a staple in Depression-era homes, where resources were scarce, but ingenuity was abundant. Picture this: fresh, ripe tomatoes, often grown in victory gardens or bought at local markets, sliced thick and juicy. These vibrant red slices weren't just a burst of color, they were a refreshing taste of summer during tough times. But what made this sandwich truly special was the creamy, tangy mayonnaise. Unlike butter or margarine, mayo added moisture and richness that elevated the humble bread and tomato. During the 1930s, fresh vegetables were a luxury for many families, especially in urban areas. The tomato and mayo sandwich offered a quick, nutritious meal that didn't require expensive ingredients or complicated preparation. It was the perfect lunch for workers heading back to factories or kids coming home from school, looking for something light yet filling. The choice of bread was just as important as the fillings. Soft white bread or even homemade whole wheat loaves became the perfect canvas to hold those juicy tomato slices and smooth mayonnaise. A sprinkle of salt and pepper was often added to enhance the flavors, making every bite memorable. What's fascinating about this sandwich is its resilience over time. Though simple, the tomato and mayonnaise sandwich has remained a beloved comfort food in many households, reminding us how humble ingredients can come together to create something timeless. In a world now obsessed with complex recipes and extravagant ingredients, this sandwich reminds us to appreciate the elegance of simplicity. It's not just a sandwich, it's a flavorful snapshot of a history where resourcefulness met taste, creating lasting traditions on the American table. When we think of sandwiches, our minds often drift to elaborate fillings or savory spreads. But sometimes, the simplest ideas hold the deepest stories. The salt and pepper sandwich is one such humble classic from Depression-era America, a reminder that even the most basic ingredients could create something surprisingly satisfying. During the hard times of the 1930s, when many families faced empty pantries and scarce resources, cooks learned to stretch every ingredient. Fresh vegetables and meats were luxury items, so the essentials like salt and pepper became stars in their own right. This sandwich, made simply by sprinkling salt and pepper onto soft, buttered bread, was a quiet hero for many. It might sound odd to our modern taste buds, but imagine biting into the softest white bread, warmed lightly and slathered with a thin layer of creamy butter. The gentle crunch of freshly cracked black peppercorns combined with the sharpness of salt gave a little burst of flavor that brightened a weary day. For families living with little, this sandwich was a small, affordable pleasure, a moment of comfort in uncertain times. Salt and pepper, in their simplest forms, were symbols of resilience and resourcefulness. They transformed plain bread into a flavorful meal, proving that hunger didn't always have to mean dullness or despair. People often paired this sandwich with a cup of hot tea or a glass of milk, creating a balanced, nourishing snack that was quick to prepare but deeply satisfying. Today, the salt and pepper sandwich stands as a nostalgic reminder of America's past, a testament to simplicity, thriftiness, and the quiet dignity of making do. Though it might never top today's gourmet sandwich menus, this modest creation carries the flavor of history itself, a bite of survival and hope in every mouthful. When we think of sandwiches, creamy mashed potatoes might not be the first filling that comes to mind. Yet, during the harsh days of the Great Depression, this simple, comforting combination became a surprisingly popular meal for many American families. The mashed potato sandwich was born out of necessity, a clever way to stretch limited ingredients into a filling, satisfying bite. Picture this: leftover mashed potatoes, whipped creamy and fluffy, sometimes mixed with a pinch of salt, pepper, or even a dash of gravy, sandwiched between two slices of soft white bread. It might sound plain by today's standards, but back then, it was a wallet-friendly meal that offered warmth and a sense of fullness during tough times. Families often had to get creative with what they had on hand, and mashed potatoes were a staple side dish that could easily be transformed. The sandwich was quick to assemble, nourishing, and perfect for lunch or a light dinner. Some even added a thin spread of butter or a sprinkle of herbs to give it a bit more flavor. The beauty of the mashed potato sandwich lies in its simplicity. It's a testament to how resourcefulness shaped American cooking during economic hardship. While it might not appear on today's trendy menus, this sandwich holds a special place in culinary history as a reminder of endurance, creativity, and making the most of what you have. So next time you find yourself with leftover mashed potatoes, think back to this Depression-era invention. Give it a try. You might just discover a new kind of comfort food that's both nostalgic and surprisingly delicious. When we think of sandwiches, tangy citrus rarely comes to mind. Yet, during the tough days of the Great Depression, resourcefulness ruled the kitchen, and the grapefruit sandwich was one of those surprising creations born out of necessity and simplicity. This sandwich combined the tart, slightly bitter flavor of fresh grapefruit with basic staples like bread and a touch of sugar or honey to balance the sharpness. It was a refreshing change from the usual heavy meat or peanut butter options. Grapefruit, packed with vitamin C, was not just a flavorful treat but also a small health booster in an era when fresh produce was a luxury. Back then, families who could afford grapefruit often turned it into a snack or a quick meal. The sandwich was made by carefully peeling the grapefruit to remove the bitter pith, then slicing the juicy segments thin enough to layer between two slices of soft bread. Sometimes, a thin spread of butter or cream cheese was added to mellow the tartness and add a creamy texture. Despite its odd combination, the grapefruit sandwich reflected the ingenuity of Depression-era cooks who used what they had to keep meals interesting and nutritious. It was simple, affordable, and surprisingly satisfying, especially during hot summer days when something light and citrusy hit the spot. Though it faded from popular menus over time, the grapefruit sandwich reminds us that good food doesn't always need to be complicated. Sometimes, it's about making the most of humble ingredients and embracing flavors that surprise us. So next time you reach for a sandwich, imagine this forgotten gem, the grapefruit sandwich, a slice of history that once brought zest to the tables of America's toughest times. As we arrive at the last stop on our journey through 25 forgotten Depression-era sandwiches, we reach a true classic that has endured the test of time, the egg salad sandwich. Simple, comforting, and surprisingly versatile, this humble creation was a lifesaver during the toughest days of American history. Egg salad, made from boiled eggs mashed with a bit of mayonnaise, mustard, and seasoning, was a cost-effective way to stretch limited ingredients into a filling meal. Families relied on it as a quick snack or a satisfying lunch, especially when meat was scarce or too expensive. The creamy, tangy filling between two slices of soft bread offered a delicate balance that comforted the soul and filled the belly. What makes the egg salad sandwich stand out is its endless adaptability. From adding crunchy celery or a dash of paprika to layering it with fresh lettuce, this sandwich invited creativity within frugality, a hallmark of Depression-era cooking. It symbolized resilience, thrift, and the heartwarming simplicity that helped many get through hard times. And there you have it, the final taste from a collection of 25 unique sandwiches that shaped America's culinary history in ways most of us have forgotten. Each sandwich tells a story of survival, innovation, and tradition, reminding us that even the simplest foods hold rich heritage. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Out of all these sandwiches we've explored, which ones have you tried or want to try? Have you ever made an egg salad sandwich the old-fashioned way? If you enjoyed diving into these forgotten flavors of the past, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support helps keep these stories alive, bringing history's tastiest secrets to your screens. Thanks for joining me on this delicious journey. More fascinating food tales are on the way, so stay tuned.